Hello, my friend, and welcome to the Champions Adjust Sports Talk Show. My name is Aaron Machbitz. The U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Committee have effectively barred transgender women from competing in women's sports, telling the federations overseeing, swimming, athletics, and other sports, it has an obligation to comply with the executive order that President Trump issued. So U.S. Olympic officials told national governing bodies they will need to follow suit, adding that the USOPC has engaged in a series of respectful and, constructive conversations with federal officials since Trump signed that executive order. And so as a federally chartered organization, we have an obligation to comply with federal expectations. That is what the USOPC CEO, Sarah Hirschland, and President Gene Sykes wrote in a letter. They also said, our revised policy emphasizes the importance of ensuring fair and safe competition environments for women. All national governing bodies are required to update their applicable policies in alignment. That's what the CEO and president of USOPC said. After they said that, the National Women's Law Center, remember that, put out a statement condemning the move, which, if you think about it, makes zero sense. The National Women's Law Center is condemning the move to make women's sports more safe and fair, right? You would assume that they would want fairness and safety for women so that women are competing against women so it's safe and it's fair. But they condemn the move, which means they want women to go up against biological men who are trying to compete against and as women. It just doesn't make sense. If you can make that make sense to me, please, why the National Women's Law Center would be against a move of fairness and safety in Olympic and Paralympic sports, right? Women should be competing against women, biologically speaking. And if you were born a man and you went through male puberty, then you can compete against other men. It doesn't matter what sort of how you want to identify, but it's about your biology, your bone structure, and scientific evidence that does give you an advantage against other women. And so a women's center should be promoting and encouraging safety and fairness for women's sports. That should be at the forefront of their policy, but I guess not. The NCAA changed its participation policy for transgender athletes to limit competition in women's sports to athletes assigned, can't stand that word, athletes assigned female at birth, right? I took some notes and I took some notes from I think it was an NPR article, and they used the word assigned female at birth. You were just born a female. That's it. You weren't assigned anything. That's what you are. You're born a male or a female. That's it, right? And so again, the NCAA changed its participation policy for transgender athletes to limit competition in women's sports to athletes that were born female. There we go. And that change came a day after Trump signed the executive order intended to sort of ban transgender athletes from girls and women's sports, right? Female eligibility is a key issue for the International Olympic Committee, or the IOC, under its new president, Christy Coventry. The IOC has allowed individual sports federations to set their own rules at the Olympics, and some have already taken steps on the topic, right? Stricter rules on transgender athletes, like barring them from women's events, anyone who went through male puberty, right? Which is the right, most scientific, most accurate, most factual thing to do. Those laws have been passed by swimming, cycling, and track and field. Soccer is reviewing its eligibility rules for women and could set limits on testosterone. That doesn't make sense. We've seen, 14 and 15-year-old boys soccer clubs beat national level ranked teams because you can just see there's a difference in testosterone, in speed, in strength, even from like a 14, 15, 16-year-old boy to a nationally level ranked women's soccer team, right? So there should be absolutely strict rules on the participation of transgender athletes. Now, anytime this conversation is had, transgender activists say, well, you just don't want trans people to exist. That is literally not part of the conversation at all. Transgender people are real human beings. They deserve love and respect and empathy. And there's certain situations, though, that you have to take into account facts, right? Is it about inclusion or it's about fairness? I think in sports, it's about fairness. And then when you get in the sport, it's about merit, who does the best job. But the playing field has to be level and the playing field has to be fair. So don't think that because people have these conversations about transgender athletes or trans folks in sports or Olympic sports that they just want trans people to cease to exist. That's just not the case at all. They're real human beings and they're going through something and they transitioned or they didn't transition. They feel good about their transition or they don't. That's not the conversation I'm having. We have to see, people as real human beings. Everyone was made in the divine image of God. I do believe that. But this is a specific conversation about the participation of trans athletes in Olympic sports. And it should be about fairness, especially when you talk about transgender women, which are biological males competing against women. That should not happen. We've seen the evidence as to why it happens. There's evidence everywhere about, the 1,000th ranked tennis guy going against Venus Williams. I don't know if he was 1,000th ranked, but you've seen the story. You can look it up, right? You've seen the 15U soccer team against the nationally ranked soccer team. You see NBA versus WNBA, right? You see all of these examples as to why it's unsafe for biological men who transition into women, become transgender women. They're not real women, right? They're just transgender women, which is a huge difference from a real woman. I'm watching my wife be pregnant right now. That's what a real woman is capable of being and doing. It's absolutely incredible to watch her be pregnant and grow this child and deliver it. That's what a real woman is capable of. That's their superpower, and we have to understand that. So a biological male who goes through puberty should absolutely not be allowed to compete against other women, and that's where the strict rules against these transgender athletes should be applied across all spectrums. Maybe there's some like one or two sports that don't have sort of a physical advantage to them, potentially like, I don't know, pool or darts or bags, right? Of course, there's exceptions, but in general, this is the rule that should be applied across the whole sort of sports world. And back on the IOC, Trump has said he wants the IOC to change everything having to do with this absolutely ridiculous subject. It is kind of ridiculous that this conversation is even being had. Like, biologically born men who go through puberty competing against other women is like absolutely unheard of, especially how far we've come with, talking about encouraging and our young ladies and young women to get into sports and building women's sports up and making it, something that's very important and we're proud of it. And then this happens and and then national women's movements want to fight against it. It doesn't make any sense. If we want to really care about women, we should keep women's sports only to women. Anyways, that's the update on that. And then I think Los Angeles will host the Summer Games in 2028. So we'll see what happens in these 3 years leading up to those Summer Games in the Olympics of 2028. But that's my update from here. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Then like this video, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you guys next time. Lots of love. Cheers.